Donald Trump has successfully capitalized on the pretty obvious but not often publicly spoken about xenophobia in the Republican electorate by using this nativist rhetoric to coalesce and catalyze those ideas behind his campaign. That's sort of on the one hand. That's how Donald Trump has used the hateful rhetoric to help himself. On the other hand, is a very real and sort of existential problem for the Republican Party as we know it. There was a national poll released late last week by America's Voice and Latino Decisions, and it found that 79% of voters had a very unfavorable opinion of Trump. And if you subdivide that and look at Latino voters had an 87% generally unfavorable opinion of Donald Trump. And when they were asked about Trump's policy plan to deport the more than 11 million undocumented immigrants that are presumed to be in the U.S., 80% of Latino voters indicated that they were much less likely to vote for Trump as a result of that. 87% of voters saying they were less likely to vote for Trump generally. But what if Donald Trump isn't the nominee? Is Trump the only Republican who's having trouble with Latino voters? No. Even Senator Ted Cruz, who is to some extent Hispanic, right? I mean, he doesn't really play that identity up, except every once in a while trying to speak some broken Spanish to Marco Rubio on the debate stage. Ted Cruz is also having a problem with Latino voters. There are 34% who have a very unfavorable rating of Ted Cruz among Latino voters, 52% who have an unfavorable rating generally. And even when voters were told that Ted Cruz supports deporting the country's undocumented population, 61% of Latino voters said they are much less likely to vote for Ted Cruz. And lastly, the last bit of data which should terrify Republicans is that Latino voters appear to be increasingly enthusiastic about voting in November. And this is problematic for a number of reasons. Number one, we've talked, Lewis, about the changing demographics of the U.S., and Republicans can no longer just depend on the white vote to win elections. It probably won't work in 2016. By 2020, it definitely won't work because of the changing demographics. In addition to that, with the exception of Cubans, who tend to be the more conservative Latino voters in the United States, Latino voters are very, very liberal and tend to vote Democratic. So on a number of fronts, this is really, really a problem for the Republican Party. These results should horrify them.
Yeah, and those numbers aren't surprising. It's the party of racism, it's the party of xenophobia.
Yep.
And why on earth would you support it as someone who is not white? And we've said that the Republican Party really needs to change. You would have thought that this would be the election where that might happen. Not so much. And so I'm wondering, how long is it going to take for them to start having candidates that that Latinos will vote for? 4 years, 8 years? 12?
Well, we will see what happens in terms of this year. If Donald Trump is the nominee, and that is by no means a foregone conclusion right now, I believe that a traditionally red state will go blue. It could be Arizona. It could be Georgia. There are Democratic strategists that are part of the Turn Texas Blue movement. I think that if it's going to happen, it's still not immediately ahead of us. But Arizona or Georgia could definitely go blue if Donald Trump is the nominee for a number of reasons, particularly in Arizona, because of the Latino vote. This could be an incredibly unique election.